From our perspective, the partnerships with folks like Matt and Sam Nutrition and several other our partnerships over the years have been tremendously valuable that open our eyes to what folks are seeing out there in the field. What types of practices are being implemented in terms of ingredient usage, what types of questions are being generated by nutritionists, asking Matt, asking their folks at companies like Sam Nutrition, where does data need to be generated to build confidence in how to use technology? So with a partnership between ingredient suppliers like Sam Nutrition and K-State, it allows us at the university to stay relevant and stay on the cutting edge and answer questions that producers and nutritionists and veterinarians are asking.
Hello, and welcome to the Swine It podcast. I'm Dr. Tara Donovan, your host, and today I have two guests with me. First, let me introduce Dr. Jordan Gebhardt. Jordan is an associate professor in swine production at Kansas State University. I also have Matt Einarson. Matt is the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Sam Nutrition. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So today we're going to explore how academic industry partnerships are shaping the future of animal nutrition, research, and innovation. Before we get started, I'd like to have my guests introduce themselves a little further. So Jordan, you start.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity and glad to be here with the discussion today. So Jordan Gebhardt, I grew up on a small family farm in West Michigan. We had raised a few livestock, spent a lot of time at my dad's local feed mill, and really enjoyed aspects of veterinary medicine, making decisions and health and production decisions using data and information, and also had a strong interest in nutrition with that background and upbringing. So went to Michigan State University and did a degree in animal science, and then really was at a crossroads. Do I want to go down the path of vet school and become a veterinarian, or go down the path of continuing my education with graduate school in nutrition? So I was very fortunate to have some great mentors and be given good guidance, and was fortunate to come out here and interview and have an opportunity at Kansas State University, where I did my DVM training as well as PhD in applied swine nutrition. And following that, was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to be able to stay on faculty, where I am currently. Been in this role for about 5 years in the College of Veterinary Medicine at K-State, and work very closely with our applied swine nutrition team. In total, we have 6 faculty members and between 12 to 14 graduate students, all focused on answering applied swine nutrition questions for the swine industry.
Great. And Matt?
Yeah, hi, Matt Einarson. I'm Vice President of Sales for Sam Nutrition. This is a role that I've held for 2 years today, actually, celebrating that milestone with a card and a cake, which was exciting. I'm from a small farming community, not from a farm itself, but a farming community in Manitoba, Canada, where I was born and raised. And went to high school there, went to university, did an undergraduate degree in animal sciences, and then did what my friends said at the time, which was hit the snooze bar of life, Tara. And I went on and did a master's degree in ruminant nutrition, and then promptly forgot everything I knew about 4 stomachs. And I went on to sell feed additives across Western Canada for a company called Alltech. Spent 9 years there. And then I went on to pursue my dreams and passions and to make use of the investment I made after 7 years of university, and became a poultry nutritionist for a feed and premix company in Western Canada. Ended up kind of growing throughout the ranks there, variety of different positions, and found myself at the helm of that business for 3.5 years prior to it being purchased by Alltech, and then did some work in M&A, and then found myself overseas in Bangkok, Thailand, where I looked after Alltech's business for Southeast Asia, including 5 countries, and great opportunity. Was over there with the family and the kids, and spent 7 years in that position, and came back to Canada and started working with the Porva. And so our current business here, we're the largest importer of feed ingredients into the United States, and we've used that as a platform to be able to scale into feed additives under our Nexus brand, as well as expanding internationally. So into Canada, my backyard, we're fully coast to coast now for over a year. Just back from Latin America, we've got an office in Chile and doing some expansion down there. So it's been a wonderful ride for 23 years in this industry, and looking forward to the next 20.
Great, thank you. And diverse species, right? Ruminant poultry, and now we're talking about swine. So great to have you on our show.
At Nexus, powered by SAM, we redefine livestock nutrition with science-backed innovations that enhance performance, maximize efficiency, and promote sustainability. We connect producers with the future of animal health and productivity through cutting-edge feed technologies and environmentally conscious solutions. By addressing the demand for efficient, sustainable nutrition, we reflect SAM Nutrition's commitment to excellence, delivering premium, scientifically proven solutions that drive results.
So we're going to talk about collaborations and partnerships. So Matt, start us off by telling me, how does SAM Nutrition and Kansas State, how did that partnership begin?
Yeah, so it all started, again, as I mentioned, SAM Nutrition having kind of a primacy in importing feed ingredients. And so right around the time when the threat of ASF, started to pop up in 2019 and 2020, our CEO, Apoorva Shah, really was looking for, to develop some guidelines around the safe importation of feed ingredients. And so he had reached out to our partner and collaborator, which was Pipestone Nutrition, people like Scott D. and Dr. Roger Cochran, who I can now affectionately call a colleague of mine, helped to build out what became our rigorous biosecurity guidelines. And so at that time, we didn't want to necessarily keep that proprietary. We wanted to be able to share that, across the industry. And that's how we got in contact with Jordan, who, was still now in a leadership capacity with US SHIP 3.5 years later. So that kind of seeded the first interaction with KSU, and that's evolved now almost into a kind of CRO type of relationship where, we've conducted 12 peer-reviewed trials, 6 of which in the last 24 months have been done in collaboration with his team at KSU.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, how does it benefit the university side?
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt did a nice job of describing kind of how the relationship came about. A lot of it based on how do we generate best practices and create some opportunities in the swine industry to do things safely in terms of ingredients coming into the U.S. from areas that may have diseases and pathogens we don't want. So really it evolved from there and then expanded into, well, we've got some questions in how certain products, certain technologies, certain tools would apply in production systems, mainly on the nutrition side. So it really evolved from there and asking questions. How can certain products, how do they compare to other products in the marketplace? How can we design new or innovative approaches of using technologies, but all in a commercial environment? So here at K-State, from our perspective, the partnerships with folks like Matt and SAM Nutrition and several other partnerships over the years have been tremendously valuable that open our eyes to what folks are seeing out there in the field. What types of practices are being implemented in terms of ingredient usage? What types of questions are being generated by nutritionists? Asking Matt, asking their folks at companies like SAM Nutrition, where does data need to be generated to build confidence in how to use technology? So with a partnership between ingredient suppliers like SAM Nutrition and K-State, it allows us at the university to stay relevant and stay on the cutting edge and answer questions that producers and nutritionists and veterinarians are asking. And the basis of all of that is conducting quality and impactful research. But we see that as an opportunity to also incorporate and include graduate student training within that model, exposing graduate students to the industry questions. How do we design an experiment to answer that question? The students go through, do all the hard work, do the data collection, analysis, interpretation, and then communicate those findings with a larger audience. So we really see that as the value of the partnership, answering cutting edge questions and getting student exposure and student training to develop them and into future professional careers in the swine industry and beyond.
Yeah, we have to keep getting interest in coming into agriculture and swine nutrition, and so definitely opportunities to get research projects and graduate student projects. So Matt, how does, from your perspective, how does working with research university versus doing in-house trials, why is that important?
I think the biggest advantage for us is trust, and credibility. we've worked with a number of different research institutions, and we're so proud to call ourselves a partner of Kansas State University in the sense that they've are globally renowned for their capacity in applied swine research. So for us to take the theoretical out of a laboratory and simply just put it onto a price list is one way to tell a story. But we think a better and more compelling way is to be able to provide a framework where we can demonstrate the efficacy of these technologies in real world settings, done in an accredited format with a university or a research institution that has the kind of legacy that KSU does. But more importantly, it also provides us an interpretation of what does this data mean. So data that is with no interpretation really is just becomes a spreadsheet. And so having the likes of Jordan and his colleagues there to be able to help not only us understand what that application is and the insights that come with the data, but that gives us global reach at that point to be able to say technology from a laboratory into a research facility is going to be able to generate what type of output in a commercial production system. And that's the benefit that we get through a collaboration with an institution such as Kansas State University.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, tell me about funding, right, for graduate student projects and stuff. How do the collaborations work, and how does that help you and the research that you do with graduate students?
Any graduate program or any training program, any business requires funding to be able to maintain that, grow, and ultimately keep that going, keep the wheels rolling. Graduate students like to get paid, and I understand why, and all of that just takes resources. So answering relevant industry appropriate, relevant, timely questions takes funding, and that funding in an academic model can come from a variety of different formats. Certainly in the news and in recent months, a lot of discussion related to research funding from the federal level or the state level. A lot of research funding in U.S. and even international academic institutions come from the government. In our program, and more applied in nature, understanding and working more directly with producers, we historically haven't gotten as much funding from that level and rely more on trade organizations like the National Pork Board, Swine Health Information Center, as well as partnerships with private industry. Companies like Sam Nutrition, other ingredient suppliers, amino acid manufacturers, but then also with swine producers themselves. So with our focus being more applied and more focused on the end user, a lot of our funding to be able to keep the lights on and keep the research going comes from a lot of those groups. In partnerships, is described with Matt and their colleagues, allow us to have the funding available to provide support for the grad students to conduct the trials in either our university facilities or in commercial facilities, as well as be able to dig in some trials and understand some of the mechanisms of what's going on. Analysis of blood measurements, tissue measurements, lots of different layers of depth can be added to a project, and all that requires resources. So we've been very fortunate to have great partners to be able to do the work and provide that funding to be able to answer those questions. And we very much appreciate all of those funding opportunities and those partnerships that have allowed that research to happen and allowed us to train grad students in the process.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Matt, let's jump into kind of something tangible. Tell us about a recent trial that you guys have run together and how that went, what you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, Jordan, we did 2 trials specific to copper in conjunction with KSU, commercial scale trials. One was a nursery trial, and one was a grow finish trial. And in both of these trials, we were looking at when pharmacological levels of copper can have an impact on performance. And both of these trials, yielded some really compelling results. And it proved what we already knew, which is that, increasing levels of copper at the right time have economical impacts, both in terms of performance and in terms of carcass traits. But what's even more compelling, though, is what the form of which copper is delivered, how that has an impact on performance. And what was really interesting in that grow finish trial was that we were able to see that from our next trace TBCC, so the tribasic or hydroxychloride form of copper, was able to deliver a dramatic performance response. We're thinking, Jordan, I think it was 5 pounds of hog carcass increase in that grow finish trial, and that was yielding about $1.50 performance boost, income over feed cost, compared to just traditional copper sulfate levels. So for us, that was kind of a real world example of being able to demonstrate a concept that is, well known, but be able to prove out the fact that our product, Next Trace TBCC, has the capability of delivering that type of compelling response. And then so using that as a jumping off point and platforms like this and other sort of channels to be able to communicate that is going to be critical for dissemination of that information. But just the fact that we've done it at an institution like Kansas State University, not to be repetitive, but I think just lends that element of credibility that these results are accessible to the average producer across the United States.
So, Jordan, how do you take results from trials like this and translate them into something that, producers that you work with can actually apply on their farm?
It's a great question and really a fun part of our role, and many folks do a great job of it in different roles of communicating with different audiences. But what I like about the ability to work at a university is we've got different audiences. We've got different groups of stakeholders that a lot of what we do, translating that down to the producer level or the nutritionist level for a swine producer to make decisions for what goes in the diet that gets in front of pigs, that gets fed. We're really passionate about that. How do we translate those findings to that end user? But also in an academic institution, there's also other groups of stakeholders that are very important. And that starts with our extension publications, our Swine Day reports that are released every fall, written with a more producer-focused audience in mind. Relatively simple, relatively straightforward. There's not an extensive discussion as part of those, but quick, to the point, generally 10 pages or less. What do you need to know? So we really enjoy that as a format in which we can disseminate and share those findings. Also to universities, part of grad student programs, communicating scientific data with abstracts for scientific meetings, such as the Midwest ASAS meeting, as well as journal publications that are in their thesis that are published in peer-reviewed journals like the Journal of Animal Science or Translational Animal Science. Those types of publications have a lot more depth in the types of materials and methods. What was measured? How was measured? How does that compare with previous research? Is it similar, dissimilar? What are some potential mechanisms or thought processes behind that? So much more appropriate and designed in a way for scientific audience. So that's really what to circle back, what I think is enjoyable about it. We've got different audiences, different stakeholders, and we communicate that information to those different stakeholders in different ways. Journal papers, abstracts are really the core of universities, but we really take pride in the ability to distill that information down, communicate it with producers in the field, with our extension publications, with popular press articles, as well as different opportunities to engage in dialogue, such as what we're having here today, to really try to share that information with all those different audiences in a way, and communicate it with them in a way that is appropriate for the types of decisions that they would be looking to use it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's so much data and research out there. You have to condense it, right, in some way, but you still have to have the credibility and all the background somewhere published. And so I think it's great to see just all the many ways of communication that we have, and we can condense such really in-depth studies into, a one-page paper, right? And that's pretty hard to do, but it's important to do it.
At the end of that all that research, all the time, effort that research sponsors and us in the university and students put into it, at the end of the day, a lot of that information comes down to a decision. Do I include this or not? Do I use product A? Do I use product B? At the end of the day, a lot of times these decisions are relatively simple in their end format. Getting to that point, it takes a lot of complexity, and it's a lot of fun to be able to be a part of that, but then also be involved with distilling it down, feeding the information that can make that end user make that decision as easy and as effective as possible.
So, Matt, tell me about research that you guys have done that's led you to use resources more efficiently and reduced environmental impact. It's an important thing, right? As we continue to learn and grow.
Yeah, I think within the rubric of sustainability, getting more with less, I think is of critical importance. And so oftentimes, to Jordan's point about being able to make a decision between A and B, if something can achieve more or be more efficient, I think that helps to facilitate that decision. I think what typifies that, that concept is a trial that we did looking at zinc levels in nursery diets. In being able to replace, 3,000 ppm of pharmacological zinc oxide with half of that amount with our Next Trace TBCC, maintain performance, no issues in terms of performance, no issues in terms of fecal consistency, seeing a fairly dramatic reduction in terms of feed cost. But what was more compelling is the fact that we ultimately were able to drop the volume of zinc excreted by 2/3. And so I think when we kind of take a step back and we think about sustainability, and there's a lot of things that can fall under the bucket of sustainability, and certainly environment is one of those, and certainly doing more with less is one of those. But I think in terms of environmentally conscious decision making, being able to get away with having more of that zinc being absorbed and less of it ending up in wastewater, I think is a pretty compelling reason to choose our Next Trace TBCC.
Yeah, great example.
Sunhe is a professional solution provider for enzymes, probiotics, and functional additives. We offer customized formulas to target nutritional issues in livestock and maximize the utility of animal feed. Find us on sunhe.com for more information.
So, what did each of you learn from working together that you wouldn't have on your own?
I'd start from our side here in academia is that we try to stay as current as we can. We try to get out there, be boots on the ground, visit with producers, visit with nutritionists. There's different ways we can do that. But what I think that in our partnerships with folks and companies like Matt and Sam Nutrition allows us to have a better understanding of what's going on out in the field. What are the current practices? What are people doing? What are the questions that decision makers, nutritionists, producers are asking them? What type of information is needed for them to make decisions? And then through that mechanism can communicate back to us at the university where we can work with students with that question in mind. How do we design an experiment to test that question? What's the hypothesis we're working with? Ultimately, then have access to resources to be able to do that work, generate those findings, and communicate that. So I think that the partnerships and the benefit there for the university is to have a more thorough and a better understanding of what's out there, what are the questions being asked, and it allows the research to stay current and stay relevant with the needs of the swine industry.
Yeah, and I'd say from my perspective, what we've learned from Jordan and his team is that really, rigor and discipline of science is what sets the platform, for credibility, and certainly has the case for us. But more importantly, the data without interpretation is meaningless, right? So it takes that knowledge and that wisdom and experience that comes with, our affiliation with accredited universities to reveal those insights. And oftentimes, research doesn't answer questions. In fact, it actually reveals more questions than answers. And that's what helps to drive innovation.
Yeah, they say research is you research, right? Redo it or continue to redo it. So, yeah, that's great. So, Jordan, I'm going to go back to some graduate student questions here. How do you tell me how grad students benefit from, seeing this real world industry-driven partnerships?
Yeah. A lot of the basis or the foundation of graduate student training, master's and PhD students happens here at the university. It's their classes in nutrition, their classes in statistics, grain science, feed processing. That really is the cornerstone of a lot of graduate programs. Their research builds upon that in a specific area. Some students have a little more diversity in terms of what types of research projects they work on, some more focused in one particular area. So they get a core of their training in what they do here at the university. But what I think really sets a lot of students apart in setting them up to be successful in the future is expanding their understanding of what's out there. And I think partnerships allow us to do that, whether that's working with swine producers in the field. We do a lot of our research not in Manhattan, Kansas, but in different areas, working with commercial swine facilities that have research barns within their production systems. We partner with them to conduct the research in their barn. There's some unique aspects of that the students may never see those pigs in person, but they're helping to coordinate that trial, manage that data, and conduct that research. There takes a tremendous amount of communication to be successful with that. Communicating with people here at the university, the faculty, communicating with the people in the barn that may be 2 hours away, that may be 12 hours away, and making sure that they stay current in their communication so the trial gets conducted in a way that is meaningful and done the right way. So there's a ton of communication that the students see through that partnership, as well as understanding that research in the real world doesn't always follow the protocol. There are times where we need to adapt, we need to make decisions, that the situations arise, and making decisions quickly to handle it in the best way we can is very, very important. So those relationships are very, very important that extend beyond the core of their graduate training, but then open their eyes to what else is out there. And similarly, working with project sponsors like MAD and Aporva and others, is that it allows the students to interact with professionals in the field, build that network, build that connection that hopefully will allow them to be more successful in the future. Me and my time in graduate school had a great opportunity to have very close relationships with several folks and in different positions, and I still really value that, and I still get a lot of perspective from that, seeing that as a graduate student. So for those reasons, I think the core of their training here at the university, but we really try to expand beyond what we can offer at the university and build and cultivate those relationships with others to ultimately give them the most diverse training to hopefully be as successful as possible in their careers.
Matt, tell me the benefits of, supporting this type of research for SAM Nutrition and your thoughts.
Well, it does a number of things, for us. When we approached, Jordan and his team, we were looking to evolve our business from kind of vendor and price, led conversations to becoming in a leadership position for discussions around, nutrition solutions, performance-based products. And we didn't come to the market with 30 years of research, so we needed to accelerate that. And I think, aligning ourselves with credible institutions, taking, innovative concepts that we had, in our brains and on our laptops and putting them into scenarios that we're able to, demonstrate applicability, being able to translate that to sort of real world economics has been super critical for us. But I think on the flip side as well is that, and it may seem obvious, but it's also, the network that we've generated as a result of our affiliation. I think that goes both ways as well, because we've been able to have some amazing interactions with, the graduate students. We participated in the graduate student seminar here just recently with Jordan and his team, and I think just kind of getting a fresh perspective on what is coming up the ranks from a research perspective helps us, to think critically about what are next steps for our product pipeline, but as well as gives opportunities for us to network with who's up and coming. And the flip side as well for the up and comers to be able to network and see perspective beyond just the the laboratory and the classroom setting. So I do give credit to KSU and their team for being able to provide those opportunities, because there is mutual benefit. So
what's the future hold? What do you see as topics that we're going to be researching together in the future, Jordan?
Yeah, I think that the concept of sustainability, how do we effectively produce more as an industry with as efficiently as we can with resources. I think that comes in a lot of different formats, whether that be amino acids, protein, but also certainly true, very applicable on the mineral space as well. The use of enzymes, how do we most efficiently and effectively use the right enzymes in the right situations to have the best outcomes? I think these are all areas that a lot of research has been done in the past, but I think we continue to have more questions. Is pigs change as their feed intake patterns change, their rates of protein deposition and other aspects of their growth update over time through improvements in that animal, we kind of revisit some of the same questions and how do we use these technologies, these tools to better what we do. So I think those are at a high level. I think there will continue to be plenty of work to be done to answer some of these questions. And specifically one area that I've got quite a lot of interest in is understanding health challenges in pigs. Way back in the day, 12 years ago, I didn't know if I wanted to be a veterinarian or a nutritionist, and I still haven't decided. So really kind of at that crossroads of both, how do we take a health situation, manage that as effectively as we can through nutrition as well. And we began to do some more work in that area. We've got a facility at Kansas State that we did some facility renovations to be able to do BSL-2 level E. coli challenge research. So we're on the front side of some of that work and learning the advantages and disadvantages and the bright spots and challenges with those types of models. So right there in the thick of all that, but how those aspects of amino acid nutrition, mineral nutrition, enzymes apply not only in a healthy pig in a production setting, but what also can we do to answer questions and when the pigs may not have optimum health, whether that be enteric challenge, respiratory challenge, or otherwise. So I think that's an area that as an industry and through continued partnerships, understanding how we can best position technologies and nutritional concepts to the right pig at the right time. And in my background, my interest, particularly at that area of health and nutrition intersecting.
You can't have one without the other, right? Health and nutrition. And so they're so intertwined. And certainly, E. coli is a good example. Like didn't see E. coli for the first 15 years of my career. And then all of a sudden, it's an old disease, been around forever, but then it pops up. And so that's absolutely a good area to work in. So Matt, how about you? What's next for future collaboration?
Well, I think Jordan touched on a number of things that we share interest in. We'd be remiss to say, sustainability isn't kind of at the critical, point for a lot of our focus on research. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of dialing in what true nutritional requirements actually are. We've uncovered some of, recently, questions about historic levels that we think, maybe need to be challenged. I think, still looking at how disease, affects some of those nutritional requirements is critical. And so looking at disease challenge models, how do some nutrition technologies be able to, bridge that gap? I mean, from a threat perspective, diseases, next to geopolitical is probably the one that we need to consider the most from a sustainability perspective. And I'd say the last thing it would just be looking at either novel or natural technologies to be able to replace conventional. That may seem played out or it may seem obvious, but there's still a lot of work to be done there. And I think there's still a lot of opportunities to be able to demonstrate economic returns with sort of natural and novel models replacing convention.
So we're finishing our time together on the Swine It podcast. We've been discussing the benefits of academic and industry partnerships, how they're shaping the future of animal nutrition research and innovation. I've had Dr. Jordan Gebhardt from Kansas State University and Matt Einarson on my show. Thank you so much. If you have questions or comments for our guests or about our show, please send them through on your podcast platform. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. Before we conclude, though, I want to give my guests an opportunity for some final thoughts and take-homes. Jordan?
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity and really hope I don't think anything tremendously novel in terms of discussion, but really some important stuff that I think is really impactful and important to reiterate that the partnership of industry and academic institutions is really, really important. There are strong benefits for both of those. The research is better at the end of the day, the best questions we can, and what we're really excited and passionate for is about training young people to be successful. So we appreciate those partnerships we have, appreciate Matt and their team at Sam Nutrition for some of those partnerships.
Matt, take homes from you.
Yeah, I think just to build off what Jordan said, and in particular when it comes to young people, I think, some of the attributes that we certainly look for, curiosity. So being able to ask questions and being able to demonstrate that, you care much. Nobody cares how much you know, right, until they know how much you care. And I think that applies to our relationship, as well. We're taking time to ask the questions. We're working with Jordan and his team to find the right questions. We're conducting the research, and we're asking ourselves even deeper questions, and that's driving our innovation pipeline. And it's keeping us open-minded. We don't have the blinders on. We're not just caught up in innovation for the sake of innovation. We're not pulling products off the shelf. We're looking to explore ways to solve real world issues. And I think pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, that's another kind of point that I always suggest to up-and-comers and people who join our organization is take those opportunities. I did it, moving across the world. I did it shifting species. And we're doing it here at Sam Nutrition as well. We stepped outside of our comfort zone, being an importer of feed ingredients and really pivoting into something that required us to growing into a space of being a nutrition supplier, being a performance and additive feed company has provided a lot of growth for us, and we're reaping the rewards of it. But we couldn't have done it alone, and so give credit to our collaborators and Jordan and the KSU team in particular, and platforms like this to be able to get our message across. So we do thank you, Tara, for taking the time to be able to facilitate this conversation with us today.
It's time for our famous three.
AB Vista, an innovative animal nutrition company offering intelligent solutions for the swine industry. The combination of innovative products, technical expertise, and cutting-edge services provide the ideal tools to drive pig production. To learn more about AB Vista tools, check abvista.com.
Yeah, absolutely. So last but not least, as a hallmark of the Swine It podcast show, we ask our guests 3 questions at the end. We're going to split those up. So the first one, Jordan, what's your favorite book or resource that you use in your area of expertise?
Yeah, the 2 that I really like, I'll give 2 answers here on this one. Diseases of Swine and the NRC, the most recent NRC coming out in 2012, the Swine Nutritional Requirements, and currently underway in a new edition. Should come out in the next year and a half or so is what it sounds like. So really looking forward to what that committee is looking to do with that updated NRC, and also Diseases of Swine. New edition there coming out very, very soon as well. So those 2 great resources, tremendous amount of information in those for all areas of swine health and swine nutrition. So I live a pretty simple life and find myself fascinated in sitting down and reading both of those at times.
Absolutely. I think every veterinarian in swine has Diseases of Swine, and they, we know when each of us graduated just by looking at the color of the book cover on the shelf, and so absolutely familiar with that one. Matt, the next one's for you. So tell me a book or resource or something outside of feed additive world that you think would be interest to the audience.
I heard once that people, when they're maybe in the twilights of their lives, reflect on what their biggest regrets are, and typically they fall into 3 categories: never learned a second language, never learned how to play an instrument, and never had the opportunity or took the opportunity to travel. I can share in the comfort of this podcast here. I don't speak any second language, and I'm certainly not musically inclined, but I've been able to travel extensively, and for me, that's just provided me such an interesting perspective around the world. I apply it every day into what I do. It's broadened my horizons, and it's something that I've been a big proponent of in terms of education for my kids, has been able to get them to travel and travel early. Again, bringing them overseas to Asia was such a great jumping off point to see, new cultures and to really understand how the world works. And recently had the opportunity to bring them down to Peru. It was a lifelong dream of mine, but it was a great opportunity to see the world through my kids, but also have them see and be exposed to different cultures and ways of life. And that's learning that doesn't come from a book. It only comes through experience. So that would be my recommendation: is pack the suitcase and get out there if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I just spent 2 years abroad in New Zealand, and living somewhere, especially, is it's different than traveling, but at minimum, traveling and seeing different cultures and meeting people across the world. And I have found that everywhere I go, people who are involved in agriculture have a lot of the same core values, and so that's really fun to see. So our last one is for you, Jordan. Share with us an attribute or characteristic you feel sets successful professionals apart from others.
Matt mentioned it a few minutes ago, and I'll support it and reiterate it. I think curiosity is really, really important, and we see that with graduate students, that the students that are curious, that they learn something and ask the question, why? Why is that? Or why is it the answer this in this situation, but the answer is different in that situation? And really the curiosity to dig in and try to make sense of things around them and ask that next question and try to learn and get better through that process. I think that goes a long way, not only in their time as a student, but I think also in their careers, depending on what type of role they get into, not just taking things at face value, but asking the question why, digging deeper, and trying to get to the bottom and understanding how that information can be best applied to their situation. So I think that's one that could go a lot of different directions, but to distill it down, to simplify it, I think curiosity is one attribute that's very, very important.
Yeah, understanding that not the what, but why, right? Not facts, but why does this happen? Why does this work? So absolutely. So thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. That concludes this episode, and see you next time.